The soft chime of silverware against china and the hushed murmur of polite chatter formed the backdrop to Amelia's evening. She navigated the close quarters between the tables at the Golden Fork, a pristine white apron tied neatly around her waist, a practiced, if somewhat strained, smile gracing her lips. It was a high-end establishment, the kind where the napkins were fine linen, and a single glass of water cost more than her bus ticket home. To the restaurant's affluent clientele, she was practically invisible, just the girl who delivered their food. But Amelia, with her observant nature, missed nothing. Her gaze, as it often did, drifted towards the secluded booth in the back corner. Tucked away in the shadows, it was a quiet haven amidst the bustling dining room. And there he was, Luca, her Tuesday night fixture, as predictable as the clock on the wall. He invariably wore a dark, impeccably tailored suit that hinted at considerable expense. And he always sat alone. His face was strikingly handsome, yet held a sternness, etched with a quiet intensity that was both commanding and subtly sorrowful. He never smiled, not genuinely. Occasionally, he would offer a slight, courteous nod when she brought his meal, but that was the extent of their interaction. Tonight mirrored every other Tuesday. He arrived promptly at 8, the hostess escorting him to his customary booth without a word. He ordered the same thing he always did: steak cooked medium rare, a side of roasted potatoes, and a glass of red wine. He never even glanced at the menu. Amelia couldn't help but wonder about his life. What did he do that instilled such quietude in him? Why did he always dine alone? He exuded an aura of importance, a gravity that seemed to instinctively command respect and space from others. It both intrigued and slightly unnerved her. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she picked up the heavy glass pitcher of ice water and made her way to his table. "More water for you, sir?" she inquired, her voice coming out softer than she intended. Luca glanced up from his phone, his dark eyes meeting hers briefly. They were intense, the color of rich dark chocolate. He offered his usual small, silent nod. As she leaned forward to pour the water, her arm brushed lightly against his shoulder. An electric jolt coursed through her. She hoped he didn't notice her slight, involuntary flinch. He didn't appear to. His attention was already back on his phone. As she finished pouring and started to withdraw, Luca shifted, setting his phone down. The movement was swift, and his sleeve rode up just enough for Amelia to catch a glimpse of something on the inside of his wrist. There, etched into his skin, was a tattoo. It wasn't a vibrant illustration or a simple word. It was an intricate pattern of black ink, a twisted knot of thorns, with what seemed to be a single, unblinking eye at its center. Possessed a stark, dangerous beauty. It wasn't the kind of tattoo a typical businessman would sport. Her heart pounded in her chest. She quickly straightened up, mumbling a soft, "You're welcome," before retreating to the perceived safety of the service station. Leaning against the counter, she tried to regulate her breathing. The tattoo confirmed a suspicion she had been consciously suppressing for weeks. Luca wasn't just a serious businessman. He was involved in something else entirely. Something from the whispered stories, the world of shadows and danger. Yet, as frightening as that notion was, a more compelling feeling settled in her stomach. When she looked at him, she didn't see a monster. She saw a lonely man. She saw a deep, hidden sadness in those dark eyes, a sadness that stirred a desire within her to be kind to him, to see if she could elicit even a single smile. The fear persisted, but her curiosity and a strange protective instinct were rapidly gaining dominance. The following Tuesday arrived, cloaked in a strange, palpable tension for Amelia. The entire week had felt sluggish and hazy. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the quiet man in the corner booth and the dark, thorny secret etched on his skin. The familiar routines of her shift now felt different. As she wiped down tables, she found her gaze lingering on the empty booth. While folding napkins, her mind replayed the brief, electric moment their eyes had met. She was nervous, more nervous than she had been the very first time she served him. But it was a nervousness laced with a keen and undeniable anticipation. When the clock finally approached 8, she made sure her apron was spotless and her hair was neatly in place. She kept a watchful eye on the entrance, her heart doing a little flip when the door opened and he walked in. But tonight was different. He wasn't alone. Walking beside him was another man, taller and broader, with a boisterous laugh that seemed to cut through the restaurant's gentle ambience. This, she would come to know, was Marco. Luca took his usual seat in the shadowy corner, but Marco pulled out the chair opposite him, settling himself squarely in the space that was typically empty. The power dynamic was immediately apparent. Luca was the center, the quiet sun. Marco was the boisterous planet orbiting him. Amelia took a deep, steadying breath and approached their table. Luca looked up as she arrived, and for a fleeting, breathtaking moment, she thought she detected a flicker of something in his eyes, a glimmer of recognition, of welcome, before his usual calm mask settled back into place. Marco, however, looked her up and down with a broad, appraising smile that didn't quite reach his cold eyes. "Well, hello there," he said, his voice louder than appropriate for the setting. Luca ignored him and placed his customary order for both of them, his voice a low, steady rumble that Amelia felt in her bones. The evening unfolded. She brought their food, refilled their water, and each time she approached the table, she felt Marco's gaze on her. It was an unsettling sensation, like being watched by a predator feigning friendliness. Luca, in contrast, seemed even more withdrawn than usual, his jaw tight. He and Marco spoke in hushed tones, and it didn't seem like a friendly conversation. After she cleared their main plates, Marco stood up, clapping a heavy hand on Luca's shoulder. "I'm going to get us a proper drink to celebrate," he announced. Although Luca didn't seem to be in a celebratory mood, Marco strode confidently towards the long, polished bar at the front of the restaurant. Amelia was clearing a nearby table, carefully stacking dirty dishes onto her tray, when she saw Marco lean over the bar, signaling the bartender. He was too far away for her to hear his order, but she saw him slip a large bill across the counter. Something about the gesture felt off. It was an excessive amount of money for just 2 drinks. A cold trickle of unease ran down her spine. She finished her task, and instead of returning to the kitchen, she pretended to straighten the condiments on a table closer to the bar. She was now within earshot. Marco had his back to her, his head bent close to the bartender's. His voice was a low, conspiratorial whisper. "Remember," he hissed, the words slithering through the air. "The special one is for my friend in the corner. The one with the dark hair. Make sure he gets that one." A pause, then, "The drug is in his drink. He won't know what hit him." Time seemed to grind to a halt. The clatter of plates, the murmur of voices, all faded into a dull roar in Amelia's ears. "The drug is in his drink." The words echoed in her mind, cold and sharp as shards of ice. She stood frozen, her hand clutching a salt shaker so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her eyes darted to Luca, sitting alone and unsuspecting in his booth, trusting the man he called a friend. Then they darted back to Marco, whose face, now turned slightly, wore a look of cold, triumphant cruelty. A war erupted within her. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at her to walk away, to go to the kitchen, to clock out, to catch the bus home, and to forget she had ever witnessed anything. People like Marco were dangerous. Getting involved could mean losing her job, could mean getting hurt, could mean disappearing entirely. But then she looked at Luca. She thought of his quiet nods, his sad eyes, the solitary meals he endured week after week. He was a good man. She felt it in her soul, trapped in a bad world. And he was about to be betrayed in the most heinous way. The bartender nodded, picking up 2 glasses of amber liquid. One appeared perfectly normal. The other, Amelia now knew, was a weapon. As the bartender started to move towards Luca's table, the decision was made. There was no more time for deliberation. There was only time to act. A surge of courage, fierce and desperate, pushed aside all her fear. She wouldn't allow this to happen. She wouldn't let him fall. She had to save him. The world narrowed to a single terrifying point, the glass in the bartender's hand. Amelia watched, her blood running cold, as he began the slow walk from the brightly lit bar toward the shadowy corner booth. Each step he took was like a hammer strike against her heart. The clinking of ice in the glass sounded like a death knell. Luca was looking down at his phone, completely oblivious to the betrayal being carried toward him on a simple tray. Marco was already heading back to the table, a vile, satisfied smirk playing on his lips as he prepared to watch his plan unfold. There was no time for an elaborate scheme or a whispered warning. Any second now, that glass would be placed in front of Luca. He would take a sip and it would all be over. A frantic, desperate idea flashed through Amelia's mind. It was reckless. It was foolish. It would almost certainly get her fired, but it was the only thing she could think of. She took a deep, shuddering breath, her eyes locked on the bartender's path. She waited until he was just a few steps from Luca's table, until Marco had slid back into his seat, his attention fixed on the approaching drinks. Then she moved, gathering all her strength. Amelia took 2 quick, running steps toward the booth. And then, with a sharp, pained cry that she hoped sounded genuine, she let her legs give way beneath her. She stumbled forward, her body colliding hard with the bartender. Her arms flailed, catching the edge of the tray. Time seemed to slow into a nightmare. The tray tipped. The 2 glasses flew into the air, spinning, the amber liquid arcing like poisonous honey. They crashed onto the expensive tile floor with an explosive, shattering sound that tore through the restaurant's gentle ambience. Silence. For one heavy, suffocating second, there was absolute silence. Then chaos. The bartender was shouting in surprise and anger. Marco shot to his feet, his chair screeching backward, his face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. Luca, too, was on his feet, his body tense, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. Shards of glass glittered around Amelia's knees like deadly ice. A small, sharp piece had nicked her hand, and a bead of crimson blood welled up. The physical pain was insignificant compared to the terror freezing her in place. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice trembling as she looked up at the 3 men looming over her. Her eyes met Luca's for a fleeting moment, and she tried to pour every ounce of her warning into that single glance. It wasn't an accident. She tried to scream with her eyes. "Please see it." Marco's voice was a low, dangerous growl. "You clumsy fool. Look what you've done." But Luca said nothing. He wasn't looking at the mess. He wasn't looking at Marco's rage. He was looking directly at Amelia. He saw the genuine terror in her eyes, the way her hands shook, the pale fear on her face that went far beyond the embarrassment of a simple spill. He saw the tiny cut on her hand, and something protective and fierce stirred within him. The manager rushed over, apologizing profusely to Luca and Marco, while shooting a look of pure fury at Amelia. "Clean this up now, and see me in my office," he snapped. Amelia scrambled to her knees, grabbing a napkin to start gathering the sharp, wet fragments. Her head was bowed. The other waitresses rushed over with towels and a dustpan, creating a flurry of activity around her. In the midst of the commotion, she felt a hand on her arm. It was firm but gentle. She looked up. It was Luca. He had knelt down beside her, ignoring the broken glass and the staring customers. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice so low that only she could hear it. It was the first time he had ever spoken to her beyond a simple order. Before she could answer, the manager was ushering Luca and his still fuming Marco away, promising them complimentary drinks and their meal on the house. Luca allowed himself to be led away, but he cast one last, long look back at Amelia, a look filled with questions and a dawning understanding. Later, as the restaurant began to empty and the chaos settled into a tense quiet, Amelia was sent to the back hallway to fetch more cleaning supplies. She was leaning against the cool wall, trying to stop her hands from shaking, when a shadow fell over her. She gasped and spun around. Luca stood there. He had waited for her. His expression was unreadable, his powerful frame filling the narrow hallway. "Tell me," he commanded softly, his voice leaving no room for evasion. "Tell me why you really did that." The dam broke. The words tumbled out of Amelia in a rushed, terrified whisper. "I heard him. I heard Marco at the bar. He told the bartender to put a drug in your drink." He said you wouldn't know what hit you. Couldn't let you drink it. I didn't know what else to do. Luca went perfectly still. The air around him seemed to grow colder. The look in his eyes shifted from questioning to something dark and deadly, a storm gathering in their depths. He wasn't surprised by the betrayal, she realized. He was surprised by the source. He looked at Amelia, this young woman who had just thrown herself into his dangerous world to save him, a complete stranger. He saw the courage it must have taken, the pure, selfless heart that had driven her to act. In that moment, the last of his walls crumbled. He reached out, his thumb gently brushing over the small cut on her hand. "Thank you," he said, the word heavy with meaning. "But you are in danger now because of me. Marco saw you. He knows you stopped it." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to an urgent, protective whisper. "I cannot leave you here. You're coming with me. Right now." The world outside the restaurant was a blur of darkened streets and shifting shadows. Luca's car was a sleek, black machine that purred as it cut through the night. He didn't speak as he drove, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his profile sharp and unreadable in the glow of the dashboard lights. Amelia sat curled in the passenger seat, her arms wrapped around herself. She had been fired, of course. The manager's furious shouts still echoed in her ears, but they seemed distant and unimportant next to the terrifying reality of Marco's betrayal and the intense, silent man beside her. She had just thrown her entire life away for a man she barely knew. The fear was a cold, heavy stone in her stomach, but beneath it, a strange, thrilling current of certainty pulsed. She had done the right thing. They drove for what felt like hours, leaving the bright lights of the city far behind, until they turned onto a narrow, tree-lined road that wound its way up a dark hill. At the end of the road, hidden behind a tall iron gate that Luca opened with a remote, stood a house. It wasn't a fortress, as she had half expected, but a beautiful modern home made of glass and warm wood, nestled among the trees, with a breathtaking view of the distant city lights twinkling like fallen stars. Inside, it was quiet and spacious. "This is a safe place," Luca said, his voice breaking the long silence. It was the first time he had spoken since they had left the restaurant. "No one knows about it. You will be safe here." He showed her to a guest room with soft blankets and a large window looking out into the dark forest. "Get some rest," he said, and for the first time, she heard the bone-deep weariness in his voice. The next few days were strange and dreamlike. Luca was often on the phone in his office, his voice a low, serious murmur as he dealt with the fallout of Marco's betrayal. But when he was with her, the serious, powerful boss began to fade away, replaced by someone else entirely. The first crack in his armor appeared the next morning. Amelia, unable to sleep, had wandered into the large, modern kitchen and was attempting to make coffee with the complicated machine. She fumbled with the buttons, creating a mess of coffee grounds and steam. Luca entered, dressed not in a suit, but in a simple dark sweater. He watched her struggle for a moment, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "Here," he said gently, moving her aside with a light touch on her arm. "Let me." His hands, which she had only ever seen still or holding a phone, moved with practiced ease. He made 2 perfect cups of coffee and handed one to her. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and a simple, warm spark passed between them. It wasn't the frightening jolt from the restaurant, but something softer, something promising. Later that day, he found her staring out the large living room window at the forest. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It is," he agreed, coming to stand beside her. He didn't look at the view. He looked at her. "It's peaceful. I come here when the world gets too loud." He paused, and then he began to talk. He told her about his childhood, about a mother who loved to garden, about a dream he once had of being an architect, of building beautiful, peaceful places like this one. He spoke of the weight of the family business, a legacy he never asked for but was bound to protect. He trusted her with these fragile, hidden pieces of himself. That evening they cooked dinner together. It was a simple pasta, but they made it side by side, his tall frame moving easily around her in the kitchen. He told a silly story about burning water when he first learned to cook, and Amelia laughed, a real, free laugh that seemed to startle them both. Luca's own laughter joined hers, a rich, warm sound that transformed his entire face. The sad, serious man was gone, and in his place was someone bright and beautiful. Amelia's heart swelled at the sight. After dinner, they walked out onto the wide wooden deck. The night was clear and cool. A blanket of stars stretched endlessly above them. The air was filled with the gentle chirping of crickets. They stood in a comfortable silence, looking up at the vast, twinkling sky. "Amelia," Luca said, his voice quiet and serious. She turned to face him. The moonlight caught the angles of his face, his dark eyes soft and full of an emotion that made her breath catch. "What you did, no one has ever." He struggled to find the words. "You saw the good in me. You saw a man worth saving. You have no idea what that means." He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek. His touch was incredibly tender. "You have brought light into my life," he whispered. "You have given me back a part of myself I thought was lost forever." Amelia leaned into his touch, her eyes never leaving his. "I just saw you, Luca, the real you." He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft and searching at first, a gentle exploration of this new, wonderful thing between them. It was a kiss full of gratitude, of understanding, and of a promise. It deepened, filled with all the unspoken words and the shared danger and the breathtaking discovery of each other. Under the infinite stars, surrounded by the quiet safety of the sanctuary he had brought her to, they held each other, two lonely souls who had miraculously found their way home. The peace of the safe house was a beautiful, fragile bubble, but both of them knew it couldn't last forever. Luca's phone calls grew longer, his voice taking on a harder, more decisive edge when he spoke in the other room. Amelia watched him, her heart filled with a new and powerful fear. She wasn't afraid for herself anymore, but for him. She now knew the gentleman who loved stargazing and burned pasta, and the thought of him walking back into the den of snakes, of facing the treacherous Marco, filled her with a cold dread. One evening, as they sat together on the large sofa, he took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. "It is time," he said quietly, his dark eyes serious. "I cannot hide here while he tears apart everything my family built. I must go back and face this." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes, but she didn't argue. She saw the resolve in his face, the weight of his duty. "I understand," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But please promise me you'll be careful." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it softly. "I have something to come back to now," he vowed. "I have you. That makes me both more careful and more dangerous than I have ever been." The next morning, he was gone before she woke. The house felt enormous and empty without him. The hours dragged by, each minute feeling like an hour, each hour like a day. Amelia tried to read, tried to watch the trees sway in the wind, but her mind was a whirlwind of worry. She imagined a dozen terrible scenarios, each one worse than the last. She paced the floors, her prayers a silent, desperate mantra in her mind. Please let him be safe. Please let him come back to me. It was late in the evening when she finally heard the soft purr of the car engine outside. Her heart leaped into her throat. She ran to the door, her hand trembling as she pulled it open. Luca stood there, silhouetted against the dark night. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped with a deep exhaustion. But he was whole, he was safe, and in his eyes, she saw that the storm had passed. Without a word, she flew into his arms. He caught her, holding her so tightly she could feel the frantic beating of his heart against her own. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling the scent of her. Holding her close, his face buried in her hair, he breathed her in like she was the very air he needed to live. They stayed like that for what felt like forever, just holding each other, lost in the relief and overwhelming love that filled the space between them. Later, wrapped in a soft blanket on the deck, under a sky full of familiar stars, he finally told her everything. He had confronted Marco. It wasn't some huge, dramatic, knock-down, drag-out fight, but a cold, final meeting where the proof of Marco's betrayal was laid out for all their trusted friends to see, plain as day. Marco's power and influence had just crumbled into dust when faced with the truth. He was gone, banished. His treachery meant he'd never be a threat to Luca or his family ever again. The organization was secure, its loyal members now standing shoulder to shoulder behind their leader, united with a strength that felt brand new. When he was done talking, Luca turned to face her. He took both of her hands in his gaze so intense and overflowing with love that it stole her breath. "Amelia," he started, his voice strong and clear as a bell. "Before you walked into my life, my world was just shades of gray. I had a duty, sure. I had power, absolutely. But I had no light. I had no joy. You saw the real man underneath all the titles and responsibilities. You saw the good in me that I thought I'd lost forever. You risked everything for me, for a complete stranger. You are my savior, my courage, and my heart." He took a deep breath, then continued. "I love you. I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone." Tears of pure, unadulterated happiness streamed down Amelia's face. She saw her own future, bright and limitless, reflected back in his eyes. "I love you too, Luca," she said, her voice steady and sure. "I think I have from the moment I saw that sad look in your eyes. I love you." Luca didn't just go back to his old life. He built a brand new one, a better one, with Amelia right at the very heart of it. She wasn't just the waitress in the background anymore, or some secret he had to keep hidden away for her own safety. She became his partner, his confidant, the woman who stood right there by his side. He still led his family with a firm and powerful hand, no doubt about that. But now he did it with her gentle wisdom to guide him, her kindness to soften his edges, and her love to constantly remind him what he was truly fighting for. Their life together was a beautiful, passionate adventure, a blend of his powerful world and the simple, profound love that they shared. They had found a love that was stronger than any betrayal, a love that was born in a moment of courage and destined to last a lifetime, a love that had saved them both. If you've been swept away by Amelia and Luca's story, if your heart raced with all the danger and soared with their love, then you absolutely don't want to miss what's coming next. Our channel is packed full of tales of courageous hearts, unexpected romance, and love that defies all odds. Subscribe now so you never miss another story. Join our community of dreamers and romantics. A whole new world of adventure and love is just one click away. Subscribe today.